Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, the tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we?
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. We've got a special guest today. He's not a tour operator per se, but I know he's got an interesting story. We're going to dig into that. We've got Emanuel Rose. He is the founder. He's also an author, and he's with Strategic eMarketing. Emanuel, welcome to the show. So happy to have you here.
Thanks, Jason. I really appreciate you inviting me onto the show.
Yeah, we're going to have a good time. One of the things I probably should mention right off the bat is you're a fellow podcaster with a lot more episodes than I've done. And so this is kind of fun for me to have another podcaster on the show. We're going to discuss that a little bit. But I really want to focus on kind of who you are as a person. You know, a lot of times we come on shows, we can do podcasts, we talk a lot about whatever our specific interest is, but sometimes we miss the story behind the story kind of thing. So I want to dig into that. And before we do that, I do want to give you an opportunity to kind of share with our listeners, what is strategic eMarketing? We'll do maybe the 30-second, 60-second elevator pitch just so they kind of have an idea what you do. And then we're going to set that aside for a moment, and then we're going to go back in history. So tell us, strategic eMarketing, what's that all about?
Yeah, so it's a digital marketing agency that I started in 2010 after I got fired from a job that I was hired to be a change agent, which they didn't let me change anything inside the company and fired me. And so it's like, well, it must be me. I must be unmanageable. So that means I have to work for myself.
I suspect you're not the only person out there that's doing this entrepreneurial thing because they didn't fit in maybe to that. I know that that's definitely the case with me. I've worked a few jobs as well, and it's kind of nice working for myself. So very, very cool.
Yeah, and we develop marketing campaigns that are strong in content marketing and develop leads to business owners. And so we can guarantee that we will get you leads from the marketing, not just do a bunch of fancy marketing. So
all right, that's a good value proposition. Do something a little different than maybe some of the others out there are doing.
Yeah.
Is your niche? I mean, I know you have a background. We're going to discuss kind of that more adventure type of stuff, you know, which is kind of relevant to the show. But I'm curious, with strategic eMarketing, do you have a specific niche, or do you work with anybody that wants to get more leads?
Yeah, we work with a lot of people, a lot of businesses inside of finance, software, manufacturing. I have a background in manufacturing, and health and fitness, and a few outdoor brands, which I love working with. That makes it really easy. But I really enjoy the process of the puzzle of each project, and we're not industry specific.
Okay, so now anybody listening is like, okay, Jason, well, why is Emanuel on the show? So let's discuss. I mean, I found you through a podcast that you do there's some marketing stuff mixed in, obviously, but it kind of fits into this niche. So let's have a quick conversation about your podcast, because anybody that's listening to this show, I think, would be interested in listening to your podcast as well.
Yeah, well, I have kind of a bipolar existence, and so I have a business podcast called Marketing in the Age of AI, and where I'm just looking at not just AI tools, but just how we should be marketed in this confusing time of change. And then I also have a podcast called Nature Bound, which is about the things that I'm interested in, being outside and traveling and self-development and adventure. So those are the bipolar aspects of my brain. And what I'm seeing is the more I can implement AI tools, the more time I have to go and be human. So that's pretty cool.
That makes sense. I was going to ask you, you know, kind of the thing that came up for me right off the bat was with AI. It's such an interesting thing. Some of us, I'm very interested in it. I'm like, oh, I want to do it, whether I think I need to or not. I'm just interested in it. And then there's other people that are, we hear a lot of this talk of if you aren't on board with AI, if you're not figuring AI out, you're going to be left behind. So I'm curious about you. Are you grabbing hold of the AI reins because you feel like you need to, or is there something else there that has inspired you to do that?
I love change. I love whatever's new. I love tools. I love efficiency, and I love being a small business, and AI affords all that activity. So I'm coming from a mood of abundance and opportunity, and that we have to embrace change as it happens. This marketplace drifts, a natural part of existence, and we've seen it for the last 2,000 years. It's always something new that replaces a lot of the systems that were starting with fire and all the way through to what we're doing now with robotics and AI and machine learning.
Do you think that there is a natural kind of, synergy between, not sure where I'm going with this, so hear me out. The person that's kind of into the outdoors, the adventure, the travel, that type of thing, especially maybe people that'd be listening to this show are kind of, maybe what we call those early adopters. They're just curious and open. And it feels like that fits really well with AI and a lot of the digital marketing things out there where people that are adventurous and open-minded are probably grasping the AI a lot quicker than somebody that's been maybe working. And I'm not knocking working in a regular job, but maybe somebody that's been working in a corporation for the last 30 years. They talk about things like agent of change. They talk about things, progressing to the next level and all this. But when you've got a big company full of a bunch of people that have been working there 30, 40 years, and the company is maybe owned by the third generation of the family, and then you've got kind of the entrepreneurial spirit, maybe some tour operators that are listening to this, or just adventure travelers. Does that make sense? That's just kind of what came up as we were chatting.
Yeah, I think I could follow that in that those of us who are entrepreneurial roles have got to find ways to do more because of the demands that on us. Or if you're even a two-person marketing department, mid-sized company, there's always more activity that needs to happen. And these tools are amazing for personal productivity as well as business productivity in general administration. What we're seeing is in mid-sized companies, 18 to 24 months, there is a doubling of net profitability. And that is based on the time savings and the leverage that it creates in order to stop people from clicking around doing mundane tasks, and they can do value tasks instead, which is the beauty of what computers are supposed to do for us. They're supposed to minimize the mundane so that we can more fully express being human beings.
Really want to get back into your history and your story, but this is such an interesting conversation. I'm going to ask you at least one more question on this,
Sure.
On this regard, and then we'll see where it goes. I suspect you're like me and you've run into some people, or maybe you have people in your family that as soon as the word AI comes up, it's like, ooh, jobs, and everybody's going to be, because you're talking about all the benefits and, oh, it's great. We can get out of the mundane. We can be more profitable. We can do more things. But then the counter side of that is, yeah, but what about all the people that are going to lose their jobs? And, 5 years from now, nobody's going to have any jobs and AI is going to be running the world. And so how do you respond to that?
I'd say, what happened to all the wagon wheel guys, and what happened to all the guys who were gold miners and who were making buggy whips, right? Like, it's the drift. And so you say, well, the world is changing. If I work in a factory as a welder, I know that Elon Musk now has robots that does welding in factories. So he's the first one. He's not the first one, but he's the most obvious one. So I have to say, what am I interested in? Am I interested in repairing the robots? Am I interested in learning how to code the robots? Am I interested in something entirely different? But I'm going to have to go retrain. And that is just reality. It's nobody's fault. You're not going to stop it from happening, but you better do some introspection and figure out what you're going to do in the next 5 years. What you're doing right now is not going to be happening, just like me.
Yeah, I think of the candles, the candle makers were pretty upset when they started putting electric light bulbs everywhere.
Yeah.
And I suspect that if you're an open-minded, adventurous type of person, maybe somebody that's listening to the show you're not maybe as concerned because you just that's just something about your personality. We all have different personalities.
Sure.
And if you're the personality that's like, oh, this is interesting, and just embrace it. And, I'm an older guy, I won't talk about you, but neither one of us are in our 20s.
Right.
So it's kind of like, okay, we kind of need to adapt, but also fortunately for me, and it sounds like for you, it's kind of exciting, actually. It's not like, oh my gosh, I got to start over from scratch. And I'm like, this is awesome. I get to start over from scratch. So I think a lot of it has to do with kind of
all the things that you could do now.
Yeah.
Connect software to software and have it so that you can take a blog post and then send a prompt to Canva and it creates an image for you. And then it goes directly into another piece of software that will upload it into LinkedIn or Instagram. It's like, okay, good. All that stuff that used to take me an hour and a half. Now I've got it done in 15 minutes and I got time to go do something else.
And I suspect, maybe folks like yourself and myself, I was just sharing a story with someone the other day, like the first computer that I got my hands on, back in the day, my mom had ordered it. I was probably 11 or 12, and it showed up in a box, and she gave me very clear instructions because she knew me.
Yeah, right.
Do not open the box. Wait till I get home. And by the time she came home, I'd had it all, formatted the partitions on the drive and, installed whatever the very first version of Windows probably on it. And I'd never really touched a computer, but I was so fascinated by it. And now I look at some of the stuff that I'm doing with AI and just all of the stuff. And it's so exciting and fascinating that, I love it. So, and I suspect, now this is I just shared a story of my early days. And that's where I want to go with you, Emanuel, if you don't mind, is I want to help our listeners kind of figure out who you are. How did you end up doing this type of work? You've got kind of a adventurous living outdoors, nature type of podcast, AI marketing podcast, marketing business. So let's go back. How far do we need to go back to kind of get an understanding of what got you here?
Well, I was born into a working class family and my dad was very much an outdoor. And so I was literally 1 year old, tied to a tree so that I could not run into the creek while my mom sat and read a book while my dad was fly fishing. And
oh my God.
So
okay.
And this tells you everything about who I am now. I love to be outside and I don't like any restriction.
Uh-huh. All right. That resonates so much. I'm imagining me and my daughter, when my daughter was young, my wife wasn't going to go fishing with us. And if I was watching her for the day, I'd just take her, put her in a backpack and be standing in the middle of the river. Or sometimes I'd leave her on the bank and try really hard to kind of keep my eye on her. And I remember being up in the mountains in Wyoming, I had my pistol just in case the bears showed up, and I had her strapped on the back in my way. And I get that. So where was this? Where'd you grow up?
Central California, near Yosemite, about an hour and a half from Yosemite.
All right. Very cool. So what kind of work did your dad do?
He was a mechanic who worked in a can manufacturing company that built like Hershey's chocolate cans, salsa cans, things like that. Very dreary, giant factory, kind of classic central activities.
Do you remember what point in your life you decided that it was a big, dreary factory? I mean, just the words you just used. Do you remember when you kind of decided, I don't want to do that?
Just probably being like 10 or 11 and going in there. My dad had to pick something up or something, just like to see the guys all lined up at 8 a.m. in a line waiting for it to be 8 a.m. so they could clock in, and then this hot, dreary, dark, it's hard work. And my dad, he worked hard and he did overtime. He did shift work, all that stuff. And, that's what I grew up around. Really was like, that's why I want to be educated and do something that doesn't require that kind of activity. But I'm very thankful for what provided. And
I can see that. And I also, and I see the look on your face, for those that are listening that aren't able to see your face, I can see the look on your face. And I'm curious, did you pick up that your dad didn't like it, or was he happy doing this, or what's your best guess? I mean, he was duty filled, he suffered in silence the way the men of that generation did. But he always went to work, even if he was sick, even if he was hurt, even if he didn't want to. And, and he was happiest on the weekends and on his vacations. And, different person on those things. And he got, I think he got to do 2 sabbaticals where 6 weeks at a time. He was just like a totally different person. Wow. Wow.
So
So there was fly fishing. You were outdoors doing stuff. Did you feel like there was a conscious, as you got a little older when you weren't tied to the tree, did you get the impression that he was really making a conscious effort to expose you to these things and share these things with you?
I would say it was more, yeah. I mean, it was like he would take me on the trips that he went on, a lot of them, and then some of them wouldn't. Even when I was a teenager, he didn't take me on. You know, he had these big drives to Colorado to go elk hunting and things like that, or steelhead fishing. 10-hour drives where I didn't go on those, but on the kind of monthly camping and fishing trips, I was always included if I wanted to do it. And so,
did you have siblings as well?
yeah, I have a younger sister.
All right.
She would go also, but wasn't quite as enamored of it was.
All right. Very, very cool. So you made the decision, okay, I'm going to do what I need to do so I'm not doing the same type of work that my dad was doing. So walk us through that. Or was there something specific you knew you wanted to do? Or do you remember kind of when, or sometimes it's just, well, I know I want to go to school. I know I want to get an education. And then 30 years later, you finally figure out why you got the education. So I'm curious what it looked like for you.
Yeah, I just, I love school. School was easy. And then I knew I was going to go to college, and I've been back and forth to college probably 7 times. Still don't have any degree, but I'm a very committed self-learner, right? So I would just, again, the theme of being constricted by that educational system was too much for me. And so, like, I started my first business when I was 19, a mail order company in those days. And, I read 50 books on sales because I was vending at these various places, and I needed to know how to do it. And so, all along, I just pick up clues, I get training, I read books, and now it's easy. Anything you're interested in,
It's amazing.
You can learn in a week. You could be an expert on anything you're interested in. In those days, it was different. We had to actually order a book.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So I'm curious. And do you have kids?
No kids, grandkids though.
Okay. So I was going to ask you, what does, you run into someone that kind of reminds you of yourself, or you just run into a younger person, maybe they're 17, 18, and they're thinking, well, I don't want to do what my dad's doing, so I'm going to go to college or university because maybe I want to work in business, or I want to work in any number of things that you don't need a degree to do. What's your advice to them? Because you're kind of self-taught. What I heard you was you're self-taught, and we've got all these resources in front of us now. And we see a lot of conversations around, well, what's the value of a university education at this point? If you've got a little bit of self-drive.
It's interesting. I think the first thing I would tell a 17-year-old is go get counseling, go learn what emotional intelligence is, learn how to be by yourself, learn how to meditate, learn how to get outside and spend time disconnected from technology. Because the kids now, this Gen Z, they're super smart kids. They love education as a group. They're very committed, obviously, to technology. And so they don't have that challenge. The gap they have is around emotional intelligence and human actions.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't quite expecting you to say that, but as you said it all makes sense. Telling them they need to grasp AI and technology is probably just, you're speaking to the choir.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
that's not going to be a problem. But it's the, sitting on Instagram or TikTok for hours and hours and hours. And then, all right. That's very cool. So I'm trying to think here. So you started school. I'm just curious. You went to school. What was your first?
I was always in psychology.
Okay.
So,
makes sense.
Yeah. So, it's a direct transfer to marketing. And so psychology, sociology, philosophy, and I like to go back all the way to the beginning now. So as far back into the classics as possible. I took Latin, went and studied Greek and Roman history. Just all those things are fascinating to know where we came from and to be able to see progression and then how we're going to apply it in the present and the future.
Did you, that's fascinating. I get that because I'm into some of the same stuff. It sounds like maybe you're on a wholly different level, but I'm curious. So when we started the conversation, you mentioned that you had a job, you got fired, and that's kind of why you're doing, why we're having this conversation today. But I'm curious, did you have a few jobs where you're working for somebody else for quite a while? And then I'm just kind of curious how that shifted into, other than getting, I don't like the word fired, you got released back into the wild.
I got fired. I was like, we're going forward without you.
All right.
That company ended up going out of business, basically getting sold 2 years later. So I didn't feel
That's good. Yeah, that's good. But had you always worked for other, I mean, you mentioned you own several business, you had a business, you were selling stuff when you were quite young. But other than that, were you primarily working for companies and in organizations, or?
Kind of back and forth. What I started when I was 19 was a hemp business. I was retailing hemp products in the early 90s. So making hemp bracelets out of twine, ordering stuff, various things. And then that folded into a bigger company that I then was the salesperson for. And then I eventually got forced out of that company by, kind of the big money people came in. And I was a yokel. I really didn't know any compared to what the 40 and 50 business. I would totally get it. And then, I worked in electronics. I worked in some other clothing manufacturing companies. I built some business for some other people also. I was due big bonuses that I got reneged on, so there's kind of this continual story for me, that when I'm depending on other people to follow through with what they've promised me in order to go and do this work for them, that it doesn't work out so cleanly. So I have to a little bit of the trailblazer out in front and bringing that back to people to create the value.
All right. That's very cool. So now in your business, sometimes we talk about, I'm independent. I do my own thing. I own my own business. I'm an entrepreneur, but because I don't want to be reliant on somebody else, but then you have clients.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm curious. So how do you reconcile that with okay, I don't want to be dependent on them, but I kind of am dependent I need some clients.
Sure.
So for somebody that has not been an entrepreneur or maybe has not done this type of work, how do you manage those relationships? Tell us everything you know. How do you manage those relationships with marketing clients where it feels differently for you, where you feel like, okay, I've got it's my business, as opposed to, being on a payroll for somebody?
Yeah. It's not everybody's wired for one. I think it's only 17% of us are. So number one, you could take that pressure off of yourself to be an entrepreneur, because you're either wired for it or you're not. And we need people who like to work for other people, right? I mean, I have people that work for me and I appreciate them. They do things I am not capable of doing. I have a project manager, which it's like me being my own bookkeeper. I cannot do that. So there's nothing. I mean, it's just as valuable being an employee. I'll just say that. That's the foundation.
And sometimes a lot less stressful. I think that's a big part of it. When you say not everybody is wired for it, there is. I don't know about you, but I've read a lot. I'm really interested in psychology as well. And even on social media, you see a lot of talk about, a very large percentage of entrepreneurs probably have a little bit of ADHD, is kind of the word that we throw around. There's other ways of looking at that and just say, well, some of us have evolved through slightly different lines. The person that used to be a great hunter and gatherer was probably what we would, define as ADHD. And the person that makes a great farmer, that has the consistency and is able to get up in the morning and do the same thing every day is just a slightly different person. And the person that's able to get up and do the same thing every day is maybe not going to feel super comfortable in a situation where they're, going out looking for new clients and they're not, they've got their month booked out, but then the next month is nothing and they've got to figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's definitely a mix of different people.
Yeah. And if you are interested in having your own business and that you have a skill or provide a service, then you really want to get some counsel from somebody who's in that industry. You want to get some counsel from somebody else who's retired and has sold their business, and get some connection with some people more experienced than you.
How do you do that? I'm just going to ask you. So somebody listening to this, oh, that sounds great, Emanuel. Yeah, get some counsel. But I don't if you grew up with a family that, your dad's working in a factory and who knows what mom's doing or other people around you. And you're like, I feel this desire to go do my own thing. I want to go.
Yeah.
A good example is kind of this digital nomad thing. I'm living that digital nomad life. And very quickly, if you're like, I want to go travel and be a digital nomad, the number one question that comes up right out the gate is, what the hell am I going to do? How am I going to make money? And the traditional jobs don't generally align with traveling the world with everything you own in your suitcase. So
Yep.
I see in a lot of the social media groups people come in and like, how are you guys doing this? And frankly, I love sharing, but when I see those posts in the social media group, how do you do this? How did you get started? I'm like, yeah, I see that post 15 times a day. I'm not going to probably take the time to reach out to someone out of the kindness of my heart and say,
Yeah.
here, let me take you under my wing. And if they sent me a direct message, I might even kind of still be the same. I'm like, you know what? You're going to have to figure it out. So I might say you're going to have to figure it out. I don't feel good about myself when I say that, but you said you need to find a mentor, maybe find somebody that's done it. So what's your advice? How do you do that?
Well, I would say there's probably three things you could do. Number one, you could call Bordy.ai, and it's a voice AI that will connect you with and help you find people to solve any problem they have on LinkedIn. So you can.
I want to hear more about this. I don't want you to go to number 2 without finishing this thought. Bordy AI. I've never heard of
so
it.
it's BOARDY.ai. Right now, it's a VC funded voice assistant, the best way
Okay.
to talk about it. And so you just say, hey, Bordy. And he talks with an Australian accent, and he'll say, yeah, mate, what do you need? And you're just like, hey, thinking about starting a business where I do bicycle tours of Reno, Nevada. And I've never done a tour business before. Can you connect me with somebody who's doing something similar? And Bordy will say, hey, let me think about it for a second, mate. And then you kind of can hear the whir of the computer. And he's like, hey, I got somebody for you. Sam Jensen, Melbourne is doing it. Let me connect you by email. And sure enough, you get an email from Bordy, you get a connection to Sam, and then you set up a time and have a conversation.
So, but Sam is just, Bordy found Sam because Sam does this, but
Yep.
Sam didn't raise his hand and said, hey, Bordy, please send me anybody that wants to talk about starting.
Well, Bordy reaches out to Sam and says, hey, Emanuel wants to start a bicycle business in Reno. Are you interested in talking to him? And then he say yes or no, and then the connection happens.
That's pretty cool. All right.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I've met some very, very high-powered people in the UK and in the United States that I need as referrals through Bordy AI. And actually, one of the guys from Bordy is going to be on my podcast at some point. So I'll send you that recording when I.
That's very cool. I was actually going to ask, I was like, have you used Bordy? Because it sounds like a great resource for somebody that has a podcast, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Exactly. You should check it out. You'll love it. I promise you'll get value from it.
All right. That's very cool. That's just one little nugget. Wow. Okay. You're bringing a lot of value. I appreciate that. You said there were a couple other things. Is there something else along those lines of finding a mentor or finding somebody to have a conversation
definitely.
with?
Through LinkedIn, you'll be able to, 1 million people who are already doing what you want in some form or fashion. And then what I would do is I would do a sales navigator search for people 40 years of experience because they're going to be close to retirement. And then you would have somebody like that usually likes to talk about how much they know help somebody. Plus, they might also be willing to sell the business to you. And then you've just bought yourself a running business versus trying to start one up, because getting up and running into a cash flowing business is a way different experience than stepping in and managing a cash flowing business.
I love that you're sharing these ideas, and it just kind of is. I was listening to you. I said, I had gotten out of adventure tour for a while. Most of my life I've spent in it, so I consider myself a lifelong tourism person. But there was a period of time where relationship and family dynamics kind of suggested that maybe I go into residential real estate for a while, which was like, honestly, was like gouging. Well, I'm a digital nomad. I'm living out of my suitcase. So you can imagine I'm probably not the personality that should be doing residential real estate.
Even close. Maybe funding it. That would make sense because you could do that for me.
Yeah. So anyway, when I was like, okay, well, I was thinking this along the same lines. It's like, okay, I'm getting back into this. I've got some old connections that I kind of let go cold, wanted to create some new connections. And you're honestly, you and I are participating in my endeavor to reach out and reconnect. I started a podcast. I was like, I want to speak to these people. I want to have these conversations. I want to learn. I want to get a better idea of what they're going through, what their struggles are, so I can figure out solutions and all this. And for me, it was just, I had done residential real estate. I had been calling people, asking them, whoa, what would it take for you to get you to sell your house? And it was just miserable. And I was like, I did not want to do that. And I thought, well, if I want to get these people on the phone to have a conversation with me, I'd much rather reach out and say, hey, let's have a conversation about your business, your life, and we'll record it and we'll share it with the world. So here we are 100 and some episodes later, and I love it. I get to have conversations with people like yourself and others that have been around doing it. So I'm sharing that because if somebody is listening to this that wants to reach out and connect with people, maybe a podcast is a good idea. I don't know. What do you think? You've got 2 podcasts. Would you do it again?
I say absolutely. And I'm having a hard time not starting a 3rd podcast. The leverage of podcast is astronomical for anybody who has a business. And it is, I cannot ask you to embrace it more. And that it started today, first episode, get on there, go. The tools and the technology are totally accessible for $100. You can start your podcast. And then the multitude of benefits. Number one, you have more content than you'll ever need for every social media post for the rest of your life. I could never do another podcast, and I would never have to do a post for the rest of my career until I die 87. Number 2, you get to talk to mentors, you get to talk to prospects, you get to talk to joint venture partners. And number 3, you can zero in your guest list just to prospects and then you don't ever have to even worry about your reach or what your rating is on Apple, because you're talking to the people that you want to do business with. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter right now if there's 10 million podcasts and it grows to be 100 podcasts, doesn't matter, because you're going to need to talk to your prospects, talk to your customers, and your friends and family want to know too.
Yeah, it's just great. I mean, when I started this, I thought, I really didn't know. I just knew I wanted to reach out and have conversations with people, and I started it. And I guess in my head, I thought, maybe I'll have a few conversations. Maybe it'll turn into a job. I'm not really sure. And now 100 and some episodes later, I'm like, this is so cool. Once or twice, maybe sometimes 3 times a week, I have a conversation with someone like yourself that's interesting. You're not a prospect per se, but we're connecting. And that's why I named it Big World Made Small. People all around the world, let's connect them, bring them together somehow so I can have a conversation. And it's been great. Now people reach out to me and, I've got this interesting person that would like to chat with you. Great. That's awesome. It's been so much. And now I've got, before I pushed record with you, you asked me if I'm doing video. Yeah, I've got 100 plus hours of video content. And we know in this world with short form video, I can turn that into, I don't know. And I'm going to ask you, because you mentioned a resource to me actually a couple times now. We've had a couple conversations. And I don't know if it's something you want to mention here on the show, but maybe there's somebody listening that'll benefit from that. I've had other podcasters on the show as well. Did you want to mention any resources specifically?
Yeah, sure. For podcasting, there's so many great tools. I like to use Restream as my recording for podcasts, just because they go live and you have a chance to grab some people while you're recording, and you get some viewers that way or some listeners. The processing, though, the tool is called Influent Frame, like influence, only influentframe.com. And it's an AI-based tool that you upload your video, or you take your YouTube link and then generates a YouTube description with tags and all that. It generates a blog post. It creates some shorts for you. Also creates an email news for your email list that you can send out. So, and that's just what it does right now. The guys are super smart and excited, and so they're adding features constantly. It's a great tool. I love it. We use it internally on my team. It's a time saver for sure.
I appreciate that, because you'd mentioned it to me a couple of times. First time you mentioned it, I threw it into a browser, and then we got off the call and I lost that. So you came back and mentioned it, because those things that you're mentioning are exactly the things that are like, okay, it's okay. I can start a podcast. I can record an episode and I can upload it to Buzzsprout or somewhere to get it pushed out. But then once you start to feel comfortable with that, you start to think, okay, well, what's the next step? Yep. And you're like, well, I probably should be sending out emails. I probably should be, I was doing it almost a year before I started sending out any sort of email announcements with episode updates. I finally, just in the last 4 to 6 months, started posting stuff on social media, which is honestly not my favorite thing to do.
Right.
And
so you can automate all that. That's the beauty.
Exactly. When I hear you say that, I'm like, okay, that sounds like it's right up my alley. There's other things I would much rather be doing with my time. I love website design. I actually like figuring out email automations and stuff like that. That's pretty cool. I'd love to, do some podcasts for some other people, get some, help them get their podcasts going. But writing social media posts and editing shorts, it's like, oh my gosh. So anybody that's listening to this that maybe wants an internship, please reach out. But there's some great tools out there. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
let's talk about your podcast a little bit. Not the AI podcast. I think that's going to be super fascinating. But your other podcasts, help the the listeners. What maybe they're watching a short right now. Let's discuss that podcast a little bit. What you've learned from doing that, and kind of what your takeaways are from that.
Well, Nature Bound is the name of the podcast, and it really is, it's like a vanity project for me, right? Like I just reach out to people that I want to learn something specifically or tell the story of me on the trips that I'm on. So like I just finished 2 episodes about turkey hunting because it's turkey season now, wild turkeys. Mm-hmm. And so I had, and I'm a fairly new turkey hunter. I think it's the 5th season. So my objective was to go and find my own turkeys and harvest a turkey on my own based on the 2 mentors that I had. And so I did an episode with each of them last year together. And then this year I did the episode separately. And then I owe an episode because I have the outcome of the hunt that I did. So it was just like, hey, I'm going to have this conversation with these guys anyway.
Exactly.
I might as well do it on the pod. Some other people might get some benefit from the experience of these guys. And I loved it because I got to ask them every question I wanted to, kind of pepper them, you know?
It's great because especially when there's like no real pressure, like I just want to have the conversation anyway, which is exactly what my mindset was. I just want to have the conversation anyway. And it's 45 minutes to an hour of just having a question you can ask or having the conversation. You ask all these questions because it's hard. It kind of gives us an excuse to get together on a call, no distractions. I know, I reach out and I say, okay, Emanuel, when you come on, make sure you turn on your do not disturb, get yourself in a quiet space, and we're just going to have a conversation. Yeah. And where else do we do that? Like what other part of your life do you say, we're going to sit down, just you and I, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to get rid of all the distractions. That just doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, and it does with a podcast, doesn't it?
It's
pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool thing. I think I'll keep doing it for a while. Yeah, that's very cool. Let's touch on, because I want to make sure we cover anything that's super, super important here before we wrap up. So I'm curious, is there anything I forgot to ask you, should have asked you, or you want to make sure that our listeners know about either you, your marketing business, your services, what's going on in your world so that we can cover that before we wrap up?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think, the other part of the Nature Bound podcast is that I started it to promote the children's books that I've written that are values-centered nature books for kids 2 to 10. And so that's part of the legacy that I'm going to leave the earth with is teasing kids and their parents into getting outside and spending dirt time. Mm-hmm. So that they can see what it is to see the moon, see the aurora borealis, watch a deer feed, see the ducks fly, get the value of that time disconnect culture and technology.
How do people find those books? Because I'm sure there's somebody listening here that's like, man, I would love some resources to help get my kid out to do this stuff. I get. Can be able to find that on your website because we're going to have your website link in the show notes. They'll be able to find.
Yeah, it's EmanuelRose.com.
Yeah,
I have books.
All right, it's very, very cool. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up? I want to make sure anybody that's listening to this, we're going to have the show notes. We're going to have the link to your website. Anything else you just want to make sure that we drive home?
Yeah. Reach out if you have interest in any of the things we've talked about. I'm happy to have a conversation and hear what you're into. Especially, I would love to work with some fishing guides, some fly fishing guides. You guys got tough business, and I have some ways to make your life easier and create recurring revenue, which is the toughest thing for fishing and guides.
It's very cool. I'm happy you mentioned that because you probably saw, and we've had a few, fishing, probably a disproportionately high number of fly fishing people on the show. And that just comes from my past. I was a fly fishing guide and did that whole thing. So I'm actually quite happy that you mentioned that. And I've got a few of them in my network. So when I do the social media post, maybe using this influent frame, so it'll be a better social host.
There you go.
And then maybe they'll be here listening to this episode as well. And I just want to share with our audience, those that haven't come across you or maybe don't spend a lot of time in LinkedIn. You're very active. You're good at that. That's why you and I are having this conversation, because you got on my radar screen. I saw you doing the things that a digital marketing expert should do. So highly endorse that anybody that's listening to this, reach out, take a look at what you're doing. Yeah, I do some digital marketing stuff as well, but it's a big world.
Oh yeah,
And
there's plenty.
Anybody that's doing it right and helping people, especially in the travel space, create more connections. And that's what's important to me. So Emanuel, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your time with us.
Thank you, Jason.
It's fascinating.
I appreciate it. It's a good conversation.
All right. We'll chat with you soon. All right. Thanks.
Good.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.